Hi guys, so today I'm going to be giving a really simple presentation. I think the time I have is only around 10-15 minutes.
About 10 minutes usually for the presentation, 5 minutes for
Of course, sounds good. So it's going to be a really quick presentation. I think it's going to be really valuable, and I find this to be incredibly fascinating. And specifically today I'm going to be talking about the topic of increasing sales, specifically through copywriting and through your text and through how you essentially communicate with your customers, with your clients, with your partners. And the four-step process that is been characterized by someone named Gary Halbert in his Boron letters. So Gary Halbert was this incredibly fascinating copywriter, considered one of the best ads men of his time, and he sold a lot with his written word. And he talks about a four-step process, which is AIDA: attention, interest, desire, and action. And in this presentation, I'll be giving out 3 examples. One is from an older newsletter slash almost like a magazine style copy. One example of a website, and one example of an email that's being sent out. So through these 3 examples, I want to show you a broad range from example how you can create a traditional advertisement to how do you use principles that can be easily replicated in your website. So the first example is, this is a very famous copywriting newsletter. It's called, "Do You Make These Mistakes in English?" And it's been run for 40 years straight. It's not running as much right now, but for 4 decades it was running. And what that means is that this newsletter beat all its control samples for 40 years straight. So it's constantly being tested. And this newsletter right here has withstand the test of time and been earning and increasing profits for the people that were running these ads for 4 decades in a row. And essentially, the principles of AIDA, attention, interest, desire, and action, can be clearly seen in this by the first headline is like, do you make these mistakes in English? That's the attention, right? That when you hear that, you're like, oh, do I make these mistakes, right? It grabs your attention. Then it has interest. It has tons of copies, but the main example of it is that it's helped over 70,000 people do blah, 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 blah. So essentially, it's like it's getting your interest. It's giving you facts. It's giving you information. Like, whoa, what is, like, why should I be interested in this? And one of the interests is like over 70,000 people have been helped. And just hearing that, you're going like, oh, wait a second, that seems interesting. And then finally, then there's desire, which for this one is like, okay, gain your self-confidence, gain the self-respect by using these, not making these mistakes in English. So essentially, it's going, okay, oh, with this, the desire for me is, oh, I can gain more self-respect, I can gain more self-confidence. And then finally, there's the action piece, which is like, which is essentially telling you to fill out a form and be like, hey, like here's how you can essentially fill out the form and get this free booklet, this introductory booklet that will continue the business relationship. So there's like it's a very specific formula, and it can be seen in a wide variety, and this is just one example. The next case I'll be showing you guys is Airbnb. So I pulled this is a screenshot from Airbnb like just last week. So this is a very recent, a very clear example, and I'm sure you're all familiar with Airbnb. And essentially what you can see here is just that they have their attention, right, which is the photo, and also with this like another headline, which is like welcome home. Right? And the interest and the desire itself can be seen in their second little subheadline, which is like rent unique places in over 190 countries. And that itself is like, whoa, wait a second, like, that seems, to me it seems interesting. And you can judge for yourself whether that seems interesting, desirable, etc. They also have a little button that says learn more. And so if you're not really sure on the sales, right, there's an option there for you to learn more, get more interest, get more desire. And finally, there's a call to action, which is a very clear, like, okay, where do you want to go? What dates are you going? And like submit the form, essentially, so that then they could follow up with you. And as you can see, like, if it didn't grab your attention, you wouldn't even be interested in reading the rest. If it didn't have interest or desire, like, why would you even be interested in like continuing that relationship? Because it's not interesting or desirable. So all those pieces are important. And of course, one of the most important pieces is the call to action. Because no matter how much the customer really wants to buy from you, if you don't have a call to action, you don't have a way for them to continue that relationship, how are they going to do that? For this example, then you're asking a client, a potential client, to go out of their way to search for a way to buy from you. That's a very increase, that's a huge step for the client, and that's a high barrier of entry. Versus a simple thing like, oh, just fill out this form in. Here you go. And then the final case study is JetBlue's email example. So JetBlue ran this promotional email very recently, and essentially what it's talking about is, again, attention. It's our 1-year anniversary. The interest and desire. There's a full bunch of copy there, but essentially it talks a bit about talks about going on a spa, talks about going on a mountain adventure, and going on a surprise adventure. And then finally there is a clear call to action at the end, which says, just like a button, it just says, let's go. So the whole point of ADA and this formula is that you get their attention, you get interest, you essentially can find a way to create interest, you present and incite desire, and finally you call them to action. And my call to action for you guys is to use this simple formula in your next business communication and see what happens, right? Start off with getting their attention. Next, find a way to present information or facts or whatever that gets people interested. Next, have something that will increase your desire. What is the benefit for them? And finally, have a call to action. And that is my presentation, and I hope this is a good call to action for you guys.
Great.
Nice.
Thank you. And now that's done for the presentation piece, and now I am question and answers, Q&A. So, any questions? Feel free, please.
So, do you guys like on, let's say, an email campaign? Do you help, help design it, and then also help have the call to action part, where it's, maybe forming the questionnaire or whatever it can be to fill out, so that it's not just returning an email that says call me,
Yes.
or something of that sort.
Absolutely. So writing an email campaign is definitely within the realms of what I do. And a quick, simple answer for that one is actually normally it's having a link of some kind, either going to a landing page, either going to another piece of your sales funnel. And what's important is that the link is tracked, so that you can see whether the call to action is effective or not. And essentially, what I'm hearing the question is how do you bring them to the next step of the sales funnel? Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
And essentially, the answer to that, there's a variety of ways, but using a simple link in an email is probably one of the easiest.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Is there any other questions?
It's also good to offer something for free. So, free, do your payroll and 5 easy steps, or the 5 most common mistakes. You offer something for free, and that also drives people to click.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
So in terms, you talked about this side, you're talking about this side. The other side is the website analytics.
Absolutely.
How does that, fit in, and how do you, how is that helping somebody, and how do you do that?
Yeah, one of the simplest ways is A/B testing. So let's just say your website gets 100 traffic, it's 100 visitors for a set amount of time. Right, an A/B test is very simply just splitting that traffic down, maybe to whatever percentage it is, but it might just be 50-50, right? So you have your control, which is your original website, and maybe you have the test, which might be with some changes, with some new copyright and stuff like that. And then essentially the point of the A/B test will be then to see what is the result of changing words on your page. Do you get increased sales? And that is a very measurable number. Do you get more people click on your call to action? Are they going to the next step of the sales funnel? And website analytics fits right into all of this, because that's the tracking piece. And there is a big difference between what customers say and what they do. Sometimes it is aligned, but often than not, it is not, as shown in research. So tracking what customers actually do can be very important, and if you're not doing that, there might be important information that's being missed.
Is this something you do off-site for people, or you go onto their computers and track what's going on?
So on tracking wise, normally involves putting a bit of code into the website itself. So sometimes in the header, sometimes it's whatever, but most of the time you won't even see the code on your website. But what ends up happening is that then there's a platform. For example, there's platforms like Unbalanced, Lead Pages. There's a few programs that do this, And essentially, another one is Google Analytics, of course. And essentially is once you have that code onto your computer, anytime a person goes onto your page, they are tracked, and you find out exactly what they do by going onto another platform.
And so do you give a report of what's been going on each month
Yeah,
on your website, or is that something you teach the people how to go do themselves?
sure. You can definitely, I can definitely offer a report, but overall, most of the time it's as simple as just logging into a simple web page using your username and password, and then you get your dashboard, which will show you essentially all the information you need. If you would like a compiled report, that will just depend on the person that you're working with. And if you're working with me, it would be like, okay, what are the metrics that you're looking for? And here's the monthly report. And of course, I will give you the login and username to see a live report that you can see almost whenever you like.
Do you have clients that like sign up on like a monthly thing that you do, and what is your fee to do that?
Yeah, so I have a client that signs up monthly fee, and it really depends on my clients because I offer a few other services as well. So I have one small client that's doing around $300 a month, and I have one client that's a little higher, that's around $1,500 a month. So it can vary and depend on the level of service that I offer. And essentially what it is there's some copyright, but there's also, I do a bit of SEO, and I do a bit of other services that have a hard cost. So if you're wanting, for example, a higher ranking in Google, and you want to get more traffic, you want to have more sales through a couple of different mediums, there might be hard costs for me, and part of that is what it changes how much I have to charge. Does that answer the question?
Okay, well, thank you, Tommy.
Thank you so much.